My family threw me a baby shower. The cake was brought out, and it read, "Congrats on your accidental pregnancy." My mother and sister laughed and said, "Did you book a DNA test yet? Might be faster to just throw it out." Then my sister picked up my baby and threw them into the pool. I screamed, and the entire party froze in horror. The autumn morning in Boston was wrapped in clear air and gentle sunlight. Eleanor Williams stood at the kitchen counter, taking a sip of coffee while gazing out the window. The trees in the garden had begun to change color beautifully, and the dew-soaked lawn glistened in the sunlight. She could hear her 6-month-old daughter Emily making soft breathing sounds through the baby monitor. Eleanor smiled gently. Married for just over a year, and a mother for 6 months. Her life had changed in the blink of an eye, but she felt this quiet happiness was irreplaceable. Her career as a graphic designer was also going well. She was able to work from home and manage her job while taking care of her daughter. Her husband James had left early for work. He said he worked in the real estate industry, but didn't talk much about the specifics. Eleanor didn't mind. James treasured his family, was loving, and that was enough for her. "Good morning, my loves." The door leading to the living room opened, and James appeared. He gave Eleanor a kiss while adjusting his tie. In his suit, he looked more dignified than usual. "I have a big negotiation today. I'm a little nervous." Eleanor gently stroked her husband's shoulder. "You'll be fine. I know you'll do well." James smiled, but there was something shadowy in his gaze, as if he wanted to say something. Eleanor sensed that he wasn't telling her everything. Before they married, James had introduced himself as an ordinary salaryman. However, their house was by no means inexpensive, and they lived comfortably. Eleanor sometimes wondered about this, but she trusted James and didn't pry. Emily's crying came through the monitor. "I'll go check on her," Eleanor said, but James stopped her with his hand. "I'll bring her today." A few minutes later, James returned, cradling their daughter gently. Emily was smiling contentedly in her father's arms. "Daddy's girl." Eleanor watched the two of them with a happy heart. After breakfast, Eleanor checked her cell phone. There was a message from her mother, which was unusual. "It's from Mother," she told James. "She wants to throw a baby shower for Emily." James's expression clouded. He knew Eleanor's relationship with her family was complicated. Eleanor's mother, Carol, and her sister Vanessa owned a famous boutique called Elegance in the local area. They were respected figures in Boston suburban society and valued their status and reputation above all else. When Eleanor rushed into marriage after becoming pregnant with James's child, the two of them strongly opposed it. They were ashamed of the shotgun wedding and called Eleanor a disgrace to the family. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" James asked worriedly. Eleanor took a deep breath. "I don't know, but maybe Mother has changed. Maybe she's starting to care about Emily." James still looked skeptical. "I won't let them hurt you. If anything happens, we'll leave right away." Eleanor smiled at her husband gratefully. "Thank you. But this might be a good opportunity to repair my relationship with my family. I want Emily to know she has a grandmother and an aunt." She picked up her phone and began to reply. "A baby shower. What a lovely idea. I'd be happy to attend." The moment she pressed the send button, anxiety crossed Eleanor's mind. Had her mother and Vanessa really changed? Or did they have some other intention? She gazed out the window, thinking. The shadows of the trees in the garden stretched long, like an omen of some kind. James placed his hand gently on Eleanor's shoulder. "Whatever happens, we're a family. You have me and Emily. Don't forget that." Eleanor clasped her husband's hand tightly. His words gave her courage. As the weekend approached, anxiety swirled in Eleanor's chest. Standing in front of the closet in their bedroom, she was struggling with choosing an outfit for what felt like the 100th time. Several dresses she had tried on and taken off were spread across the bed. "You look good in all of them," James said as he tied his tie. He was already dressed in a deep navy suit, ready to go. "I especially like the blue dress. It brings out the color of your eyes." Eleanor looked critically at her reflection in the mirror. "Mother and Vanessa will definitely say something about my appearance. I need to be perfect." James put his hands on her shoulders and met her eyes in the mirror. "You're beautiful. And their opinions don't matter. I know." But Eleanor sighed deeply. "It's the first time the whole family will be together in a long time. I don't want to embarrass myself in front of everyone." James kissed her cheek. It's going to be fine. I'll be with you. If you feel uncomfortable, just signal me. We'll leave right away. Emily began to fuss in the next room. While James went to get the baby, Eleanor finally decided on the blue dress. It was a simple yet elegant design that beautifully showed off her slim figure. What do you think of Mommy's dress? James returned with Emily in his arms. Emily reached out, trying to touch Eleanor's dress. She seems to like it too. Eleanor showed a genuine smile for the first time. Now, let's get you ready, young lady. A small pink dress and a ribbon headband. Emily looked as adorable as an angel. When the three of them stood in front of the mirror, Eleanor felt a warmth in her chest. No matter what happened, she had these two. They were her real family. They got into the car and began driving to her childhood home in the suburbs. Spring sunlight streamed through the windshield, and the trees along the road glowed with fresh green leaves. Emily had begun to fall asleep in her car seat. Actually, I have an important call about work today, James said, keeping his eyes on the road. But don't worry. I'll only step away if necessary. Eleanor looked at her husband. Are you sure? You said it was an important matter. You and Emily are my priority. James's voice was quiet, but full of determination. Work can wait. Eleanor placed her hand over his. It was a feeling of gratitude she couldn't put into words. As the car moved forward, Eleanor's mind was pulled back into the past. Every time she traveled this road, she immersed herself in childhood memories. Young Eleanor, always seeking her mother's attention, but Carol's eyes were always on her sister Vanessa. Vanessa is the perfect daughter, her mother often said. She takes after me. She has a sense of style. Her high school graduation, Eleanor was honored as a top student, but that night the family conversation was all about Vanessa's cheerleading competition. When she said she wanted to study art in college, her mother laughed coldly. Be realistic. You can't make a living with that. And that day when she announced her pregnancy with James, the cold stares from her mother and Vanessa still pierced her heart. You've ruined our social standing, her mother said. Shameless, Vanessa added. Eleanor gazed out the window, holding back tears. Why had her mother suddenly decided to throw a baby shower now? Did she really want to meet her granddaughter, or was there some other reason? She pondered, looking out the window. The shadows of the garden trees stretched long, feeling like some kind of premonition. We're here, James's voice interrupted her thoughts. Carol Bradford's house was a large white New England-style building. Several cars were already parked in the perfectly maintained garden. Relatives and her mother's friends seemed to have gathered. Eleanor took a deep breath. I'm ready. James unfastened Emily's car seat and gently lifted the baby. You both look perfect. The front door opened, and Carol appeared. She was wearing a pastel pink dress, and her hair was perfectly styled. Finally, you've arrived. She smiled, but her eyes were cold. Hello, Mother, Eleanor said in a tense voice. Welcome, Eleanor. Carol opened the door wide. And this is my granddaughter. She looked at Emily but made no move to hold her. Instead, she shifted her gaze to James. You look well too, James. Thank you for inviting us, James replied politely. As they entered the house, many people had already gathered in the living room. Vanessa approached with a glass in hand. As usual, she was wearing perfect makeup and the latest fashion. Hello, sister, it's been a while. Vanessa pretended to kiss her cheek. That dress. It brings back memories. Didn't you buy it 3 years ago? Eleanor tried to maintain her smile. 5 years ago, actually. But I think classic designs are timeless. Vanessa laughed softly. Of course. It's wonderful to cherish old things. Eleanor was about to respond to her sister's sarcastic remark when a voice called from across the room. Eleanor? I've been waiting for you to arrive. Aunt Mary approached with a broad smile. Mary, Carol's sister, had a warm personality that contrasted with her sister's. She hugged Eleanor tightly. So this is the famous Emily. Mary took the baby from James and held her gently. She really looks like you, Eleanor. She has the same eyes. Eleanor smiled genuinely. Thank you, Aunt Mary. Mary looked around and lowered her voice. Be careful today. Those two are planning something. Eleanor's smile froze. What do you mean? I'm not sure exactly. Mary hesitated. But those two have been unusually cheerful lately. especially when it comes to this party. Eleanor looked at James. He had heard the conversation and wore a worried expression. Whatever happens, we're here. James took Eleanor's hand. By the poolside in the garden, colorful balloons swayed, and tables decorated with pink and white ribbons were set with snacks and drinks. Carol's party was perfect, at least in appearance. Her society friends chatted with champagne glasses in hand, and Eleanor's relatives were enjoying their reunion. Eleanor sat at a table in the corner of the garden, talking with Aunt Mary. James was a short distance away, holding Emily, surrounded by cousins who were admiring her. Everyone seems to really like Emily, Eleanor said with relief. Maybe I was worrying too much. Mary smiled, but her eyes were full of caution. Your cousins are good people. But Carol and Vanessa. She cut herself off. Look, that's enough wine. Drink some water. Mary took the wine glass from Eleanor's hand and replaced it with a glass of water. Eleanor complied with her aunt's advice, though she found it strange. If you know something, please tell me, Eleanor asked with a serious expression. Mary sighed. I can't say for certain, but I don't understand why those two suddenly became nice to you. Especially Vanessa, who was suspiciously cheerful throughout the party preparations. Eleanor looked at Vanessa. Her sister was surrounded by her mother's friends, talking with a smile. There seemed to be something calculated in her smile. But isn't it a good sign that Mother threw a baby shower? Eleanor said, unable to give up hope. Mary gently took Eleanor's hand. Let's hope so. I truly hope so, for your sake. At that moment, Carol tapped her glass with a small spoon to get everyone's attention. Thank you all for gathering here today. Her voice rang out with practiced smoothness. I am pleased to host this party celebrating the birth of my first grandchild, Emily. Carol looked toward Eleanor and James. Her smile was perfect, but her eyes were cold. I also thank my daughter Eleanor and her partner James. Since today is a special day, I've prepared a special surprise. Eleanor felt uneasy and looked for James. He was already walking toward her with Emily in his arms. There was tension visible in his expression. It's cake time, Carol announced, and Vanessa appeared with a large white box. Everyone, gather around the table. The guests began to gather around the main table. Vanessa placed the box in the center of the table and untied the ribbon with a proud expression. Ready? Vanessa said, especially toward Eleanor. When she opened the cake box, a moment of silence fell. The cake was covered in pale pink frosting, and at first glance looked like a lovely baby shower cake. However, the words written in beautiful script on top changed everything. Congratulations on your shotgun wedding. Eleanor stared at the cake, feeling her face grow hot. The room fell silent, and no one said anything. The invited guests exchanged glances in an uncomfortable silence. Then suddenly, Carol and Vanessa burst into laughter. We wanted to see the look on your face, Carol said, wiping away tears. A fitting gift for the disgrace of society, don't you think? Vanessa also giggled, saying, Have you booked the DNA test yet? Or maybe it's quicker to just give her up. Eleanor looked at James in disbelief. His face was trembling with anger. Emily moved anxiously in her father's arms. This is not a joke, James said coldly. We're leaving. Oh, come on, it's just a joke. Can't you take it? Vanessa smiled maliciously. Then suddenly, she took Emily from James's arms. This child doesn't really look like you, James. Give Emily back. Eleanor stood up, her voice shaking. If you really love her, you should find her real father, Vanessa said as she held the baby. She suddenly began walking toward the pool. What are you planning to do? James raised his voice. Just a joke. Vanessa turned around with an eerie smile. But if she's really your daughter, shall we see if she can swim? It happened in an instant. Vanessa raised her arm and threw Emily toward the pool. Eleanor's scream cut through the air. Emily! It felt as if time had stopped. The guests stood frozen as Emily's tiny body flew through the air. Eleanor desperately ran toward the pool, but she knew she wouldn't make it in time. At that moment, James dove into the pool with lightning speed. He hit the water surface violently and stretched out his arms to catch Emily. After a splash and a moment of silence, James surfaced with the baby in his arms. Emily began to cry in surprise, but she was safe. Well done, James. Aunt Mary shouted. She ran to the poolside and took Emily from James. It's okay, baby. Grandma's here. Eleanor rushed to the poolside on trembling legs and embraced her daughter. "Emily? Are you okay? That must have been scary." Tears flowed from her eyes. James climbed out of the pool and turned to face Vanessa, dripping wet. His eyes held an anger that Eleanor had never seen before. "This is not a joke but a clear criminal act." His voice was cold as ice. "I'm calling the police." "Now, don't be so dramatic," Carol began to say. "I recorded everything," Mary's voice rang out. She held up her smartphone. "From the beginning. I suspected your plan." The color drained from Carol and Vanessa's faces. "It was just a joke." Vanessa began to make excuses, but Mary cut her off. "That's enough, you two," Mary said to Carol and Vanessa, clutching her smartphone. "You've been bullying Eleanor for years, but today is the last day." The guests were frozen in fear and surprise. A heavy silence spread across the poolside, and no one could move. Eleanor held Emily tightly as James stood beside her. His clothes were soaking wet, but his eyes held strong determination. "We're leaving," Eleanor quietly declared. "We probably won't see each other again, Mother." Vanessa. "Wait, Eleanor," Carol said weakly. For the first time, her face showed a hint of fear. "Let's talk." "There's nothing to talk about," James said coldly. "You endangered our child. This is unforgivable." Eleanor turned to Aunt Mary. "Will you come with us?" Mary nodded. "Of course, I'll stay by your side." The three of them, safely holding Emily, left the silent party venue. Carol and Vanessa just stood in shock, watching them leave. Before getting into the car, Eleanor turned back one last time to look at her former home. It was a beautiful house, but now it was just a place filled with painful memories for her. "Let's go," she said quietly. "To our real home." As the car started moving, Emily was already beginning to sleep peacefully in her mother's arms. James gripped the steering wheel, silently staring ahead. Mary looked forward from the back seat and quietly said, "What will you do now?" Eleanor took a deep breath. "First, we'll go to the police." Then she looked at James. "We'll take a new step forward." James nodded briefly. His face showed determination. "I won't let anyone hurt you both again. I promise." The interview room at the police station was cold and sterile. Eleanor held Emily on her lap, with James and Aunt Mary seated on either side. Across from them, a serious-faced female detective watched the video on Mary's smartphone while taking notes. "This is clearly child abuse," Detective Garcia said when the video ended. "Intentionally placing an infant in a dangerous situation is a serious criminal offense." "What happens next?" Eleanor asked quietly. "The video is conclusive evidence," Detective Garcia explained. "Vanessa Bradford will be arrested on charges of child abuse and assault. Your mother, Carol, will also be questioned as an accomplice." James asked tensely, "Will there be a trial?" "It's likely," Detective Garcia nodded. "However, with this video, the defense probably has little room to argue. They'll likely advise a guilty plea." Eleanor sighed deeply as she gently stroked Emily's head. "To think that Mother and Vanessa would end up like this. It's not your fault." Aunt Mary placed a hand on her shoulder. "They chose this path themselves." After leaving the station, the three got into the car in silence. Emily was exhausted and sleeping. The journey home was wrapped in a heavy atmosphere. When they arrived home, James gently laid Emily in her bed. Eleanor sat on the living room sofa, staring blankly out the window. Aunt Mary was making tea in the kitchen. James returned and sat next to Eleanor. His expression was full of determination. "There's something I need to tell you," he began quietly. Eleanor looked at her husband. "What is it?" "I haven't been completely honest with you." James took a deep breath. "I am not just an ordinary salaryman." Aunt Mary came into the living room with tea, but sensing the atmosphere of the conversation, James stopped her with his hand. "You should hear this too." Mary silently nodded and sat in the chair opposite them. "The truth is, I'm the owner of a Williams Estates." Eleanor's eyes widened in surprise. Williams Estates was one of the most influential real estate companies in town. It was known for developing many commercial facilities, office buildings, and luxury residential areas. "Why?" Eleanor was at a loss for words. "When I met you, I wanted to get to know you as just myself." James looked at Eleanor with sincere eyes. "Many women approached me because of my position and wealth. But you were different. You saw me as a person." But even after we got married, I lost the timing to confess, James smiled shamefacedly. And knowing you were suffering because of your family, I couldn't help. That has been weighing on my conscience. He leaned forward and took Eleanor's hands. No more secrets. And I will take action against those who hurt my wife and daughter. His voice was calm but cold as ice. Not just legal action, but social and economic as well. Aunt Mary quietly asked, "What do you plan to do?" James explained calmly, first, regarding the handling of the video. "I have some thoughts about that," Mary interrupted. "The people in this town should know what kind of people Carol and Vanessa really are." The next morning, Mary posted the recorded video on social media. With context, the events of the baby shower spread throughout the town. The reaction was swift. Within hours, condemnation of Carol and Vanessa flooded social media. The local newspaper also picked up the story, making it a news article. With the headline "Society Notables Arrested for Unbelievable Act," photos of Carol and Vanessa were published. Protesters gathered in front of the Elegance boutique, holding handwritten signs saying, "We don't support businesses run by child abusers." Regular customers left one after another, and appointments were canceled. 3 days later, Vanessa was released on bail, but when she returned home, the boutique was deserted. Carol was also questioned as an accomplice and was under house arrest. Their position in society crumbled overnight. Former friends avoided them, and invitations stopped coming. How did it come to this? Carol clutched the newspaper with trembling hands. Deep wrinkles were etched on her face. If only there hadn't been that video. Vanessa stared out the window, moaning. It's all Mary's fault. A week passed, and facing financial crisis, the two received unexpected good news. An anonymous buyer had made an offer to purchase Elegance. Moreover, the proposed amount was double what they had expected. "We should sell," Vanessa told her mother. "Even if we continue to run it, customers won't come back. At least with the money, we can start over in a new town." Carol sighed. Her pride was deeply wounded, but she had to accept reality. "I suppose so." They proceeded with the sale through their lawyer. When signing the contract, Carol hesitated for a moment, but took the pen and signed. Vanessa did the same. The boutique into which they had poured most of their lives would now pass into someone else's hands. A week after the contract, a luxury car stopped in front of Elegance. The door opened, and a man in a suit got out. Carol and Vanessa watched from the window. Vanessa's voice trembled. It was James Williams. He entered the boutique majestically, accompanied by several businessmen. "It can't be." Carol turned pale. That afternoon, a small article was published in the local paper. "Williams Estates acquires Elegance. New store name changed to Emily's Boutique, planning to add community parenting support center." On the dining table at Eleanor and James's home, that newspaper was spread out. Eleanor finished reading the article and looked at her husband with surprise. "You bought it." James smiled gently. "I didn't take it from them. They decided to sell it themselves. I just offered twice the market price." "But why?" "There are 2 reasons," James explained. "First, to take that store away from them so they can never hurt you again. And second," he gazed out the window at the garden. Emily was playing in the meadow with Aunt Mary. "Second, to create something this town really needs. The parenting support center will help many families." Eleanor took her husband's hand. Her heart was filled with complex emotions, but she still felt hope for the future. "Whether your actions were right or not, I don't know," she said honestly. "But I know you're trying to protect me and Emily." James gently squeezed his wife's hand. "Protecting the ones you love is never wrong." A year later in spring, a line of people formed in front of Emily's Boutique and Family Center. 6 months after the grand reopening, this place had become a haven for local mothers. Children's clothes and parenting goods were sold in the store, and in the backspace, parenting consultations and mothers' networking events were held. "Everything is going well." Eleanor placed her hand on James's arm and smiled. Her stomach was greatly swollen. 1 month until the birth of their second child. Emily was already a year and a half old, energetically walking while holding her father's hand. "Your suggested designs are popular." James looked lovingly at his wife. "This project succeeded because of your creativity," Eleanor smiled. She was in charge of the store's interior design and selection of children's products. Her graphic design skills were also utilized in the store's logo and brochures. Aunt Mary's program is also well received, isn't it? Aunt Mary held a grandparents' childcare support course once a week at the facility. It was supported by many elderly people as a place to learn modern parenting methods and how to interact with grandchildren. On the opposite side of town, in a small apartment, Carol and Vanessa were looking out the window. The two who once lived in a luxury home were now in economic difficulties, having lost their social credit. After the guilty verdict in court, Vanessa received a suspended sentence. Carol was also ordered to perform community service. "It's crowded again," Vanessa said bitterly. From their new apartment, they could see their former elegance store across the street. Witnessing it thriving more than before was daily torture for the two. "I can't stand seeing how happy they are," Carol muttered. Even if they wanted to start a new business, no one in the area would deal with them. James's influence was greater than expected, making it virtually impossible to restart in this town. That same weekend, a baby shower was held at Eleanor and James's home to welcome their second child. This time, it was a true celebration. Aunt Mary and close friends gathered, with smiles and warm words flowing. A toast. Aunt Mary raised her glass. "To new life in our bonds." Emily ran around the room with shouts of joy, and James watched his daughter lovingly. Eleanor quietly observed this scene, savoring a genuine feeling of happiness. "Family is not about blood ties, but about being bound by love and respect," she whispered in her heart. Through painful experiences, she had come to understand the true meaning of family. "What are you thinking about?" James sat beside her and took her hand. "About happiness," Eleanor smiled. "And about new life." She placed her hand on her stomach, feeling the pulse of the new life. The pain of the past hadn't completely disappeared, but it had made her stronger. There would be difficulties ahead. But she had a family in the true sense of the word. That was enough. Outside the window, the spring sunshine brightly illuminated the flowers in the garden. Like announcing the beginning of a new season,